to fill in your questions. We will get started with we will start answering those questions. And if you have any other questions, please type them in the chat window, and we will get to answer those questions eventually. And we did announce that we have a few certification vouchers to share to the attendees. We'll have the duck race at the end of the session, where we will pick 5 winners from the duck race. And with that, I think we can get started. I will stop the screen. I'll stop the screen share and I'll look at the questions. I'll go one by one. And in the meantime, if you have any questions, please start typing in your questions in the chat window. And in any time, if you want to unmute yourself, please feel free to do so, and you can ask the question directly. I'll start with one of the hack that anybody can answer this. So what is the best hack that you would suggest for somebody who wants to get into the marketing cloud development space, who is starting? Any advice or the hack to get started?
I don't know if this is necessarily to get started, but this is probably one of my favorite ones across all of Marketing Cloud, and that's for doing cloud page development outside of the cloud page UI. Actually hosting either in like GitHub, Dropbox, something like that on a public link, and then pulling it in through HTTP GET using a treatise content around it. That way, every time you make a change, you can just refresh the page. You don't need to go save, publish, and wait those 5 minutes for it to republish. It's amazing for development. Now, that being said, too, caveat is you do not leave that when the page goes live. You copy and paste the full HTML, CSS, AMScript, etc. into the page once it's finalized. But that is by far my favorite time-saving, hair-saving hack I've run across.
Are you looking for a hack to begin learning on the Marketing Cloud?
Yes, Jenna.
Yeah. Okay. So if you're wanting to begin learning on the Marketing Cloud, go into some of the templates and look at the source code, download it, and reverse engineer it. You can teach yourself a little bit of GTL that way, some AMP that way, if you use smart capture forms and do that. So there are ways to reverse engineer certain parts of the Marketing Cloud. So go for that.
To extend what Greg was saying, there's a great blog post by Ivan Mazin on how to go and use that technique using OneDrive, Dropbox, or Google Drive. There's also another method which as developers should be familiar with. Actually, I know several people at Salesforce use this as ngrok. I'll put links to both of those in the chat window. I read the question as one hack you wish more people knew more about that's made development in Marketing Cloud easier for you. And a couple of things I'd like to extend on. Firstly, syntax highlighter for Sublime, sorry, the AMScript syntax highlighter for Sublime. The current version is by Adam Spriggs. It's absolutely awesome. He's done an awesome job on that. And also, a common, say, hack of retrieving all contacts or a filtered list of all contacts for deletion, because there's no data view for viewing contacts. You can actually use or create a mobile connect list from all contacts, and then you can go and filter them and identify which ones you want to delete. I've created a kind of 2-minute video which explains that easy technique, which I've put in the chat window too.
That's a good advice. I'm just going to echo Gemma's comment around the email templates. I've personally done a lot of that learning because I'm not really by virtue an email template coder. So I had to realize how do we build what sort of refer to like, responsive templates, and kind of learn a bit how to code the emails in a way that sort of works across multiple platforms, which is important. So it's really good hack. But for me, because I tend to gravitate towards more working with data, and I always struggle with the fact that writing the query before the Query Studio was available, and it's hard because you write that almost like in whatever IDE text editor, and then you have to drop it into the platform, run it, see the results, and start sort of debugging it. So query writing, if it's not something like select 5 fields from one table, usually takes a day or two quite easily if you get complications and you need to ensure it works correctly. So what I found with the time, there's one option you can install like virtual machines and set up the things, but SQL Fiddle, and I'll just paste it into the chat as well. I found it's really, really good tool because you can define your tables, you can load up the data, and then you literally can write the SQL that gives you the results straight away. So it's the fastest way I found, even today, despite the fact that you've got Query Studio. If you don't hesitate to spend maybe 30 minutes or so to build up the tables and put some data as a result, it's all in memory, runs quickly, it's all in the browser, and I found like that's really a great way to write quickly and test quickly when you're doing the SQL. It's a fantastic way to do that. And the great thing, because you can switch to the SQL Server 2017 engine, which is supported. So as long as you're not using some of the more complex functions, it's actually going to be pretty much portable as a copy paste into Marketing Cloud, and it should work. So like most of the stuff I was doing for training in the last couple of years, that was my way to go to write that and test it. Just literally copy paste, and I had probably 1% where I had to tweak a bit, but again, it's more validation that some of the functions do or do not work still in Marketing Cloud. So that's my suggestion.
Yeah, I mean, Query Studio saves me hours a week. It's just incredible. There are some kind of nuances. Another tool is actually AmScript.io. This is a really neat tool by Zuzana Yarchenska, who has got a syntax highlighter and debugger, where you can actually validate your AmScript syntax and identify errors outside the Marketing Cloud. So it's kind of cool, which is done. Maybe you're learning AmScript and don't have access to Marketing Cloud, or don't want to go and test something in a Marketing Cloud environment. You should go and check out that tool. It's a link in the chat window.
Yeah, so I'm going to paste all these links and references in the description when we post the recording. So if you want to go back and refer to these links, you can access it there as well after the session. And I have another question that is related to the AmScript. Elliot, I think you touched upon that. So for somebody who wants to learn AmScript, is there any structured way or any other resources that you would suggest?
Yeah, there are quite a few today. I mean, there are a number of blogs on AmScript, and I can go and provide those links. Two kind of answers to that question. Well, firstly, it really depends how you prefer to learn. If you like to read, then it's a shameless plug for the AmScript guide. Go and check it out at amscript.guide, which is a comprehensive scripting reference manual with examples on every single function. But if you're more of a person who prefers to watch an online course and learn that way, then Pluralsight has a number of courses on AmScript, including one that I've authored. It's a 75-minute course, and really you can go from zero to hero, knowing nothing about Marketing Cloud, and be well onto your path to proficiency at the end of that 75-minute course. I put a link to it there. You can sign up for a kind of 10-day free trial for Pluralsight and get access to all their content. So go and check that out.
And Elliot, during your session on programmatic languages, you mentioned about your upcoming course on JS.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. So so let me go and provide a link to that. I've been getting an awful lot of requests over the past few months saying, can you please run a course on server-side JavaScript? And so we are. So I'm going to be running a course next month on August the 17th and 18th, spanning 2 days, each 1-hour sessions, where you don't have to know anything about scripting. I'll teach you the foundations and fundamentals of JavaScript, and then we'll go on and explore server-side JavaScript. It's a paid course in that we charge $140 US, but all proceeds go towards the UCSF Benioff Children's Hospital. So I put a link to that in the chat window too. We're going to announce it later this week, so you can be one of the first people to go and sign up. Yeah, like I said, it's really designed for people who don't know anything about server-side JavaScript or JavaScript for that matter.
Thanks, Elliot. And the next question is if there's an organization that is spread across different countries and use different languages, so how can we make the email customized, like display different language for each region that's sent to? Is there any way that we can do it in the Marketing Cloud?
Yeah, I mean, there's a couple different ways. Probably the most popular way I've seen is to put the copy inside of a data extension, like have different sections listed out in there, and then you have English, French, whatever throughout each, and then you just have the language inside of the sendable data extension, and then you do a relational lookup to that other data extension that holds the copy that pulls it in and will fill it in to each user based on their language preference. And that's the email that's sent out one-to-one match. That's the one that I see the most often. It gets to be very big, especially if you have high volume and a lot of languages, but it's really probably the simplest to implement and utilize. There also, I've seen some where people will link to a cloud page that has some sort of translation service on it that will actually allow you, in the email will say, click here to view in French, click here to view in German. And you just click that link and it'll directly take you to that translated website version of the email. And then there's also people that'll push to a cloud page that they'll actually write out 6 different versions of that email inside of each language, and just depending on what link you click, or if you choose a drop down or something, it'll display it in that. It really depends on how much effort you want to put is and the type of user experience you want.
That's great.
And just to extend on what Greg was saying about translation and looking up a data extension, we've got a client who translates all their emails into 18 different languages, and they actually use SmartLing for that. So SmartLing is a translation service, particularly for marketing communications and email. They have integration to Marketing Cloud, which actually goes and writes the translated strings into data extension fields, which you can then use with AmScript to go and look up. I'm going to go and put a link in the chat window.
I'm going to raise a flag for
Yeah,
translation services. I've seen those go really, really bad, and I strongly recommend translating your own copy and using a data extension or a cloud page or one of those others rather than using a translation service, especially if you're dealing with Central and South American Spanish-speaking countries.
Sure. I mean, yeah, I don't advocate the use of those auto translation services like a Google Translate, but SmartLing have a team of translators that either these are humans, maybe they I don't know, maybe an initial auto translation, but they're having actually copy editors who have that language of their native tongue going and providing those that translation. But yeah, no, very good point.
I would probably similar echo to say someone has to translate the copy, so it's worth investing your time into creating the proper copy. And performance-wise, I guess, depending on the audiences, but performance-wise, storing the content blocks in the different languages, it's actually more effective than doing the lookups through the data extensions. And if we're like from the, I guess, best practices point of view, it might be even better to consider having multi-languages in the context, and then using dynamic content or AmScript to choose the right content for the email, if it's specifically email or landing pages.
Thanks, Elliot. And the next question is about the tracking. So we do have a limit of 180 days that the tracking data can be stored in the Marketing Cloud. So if we were to track the historical data, which is older than 180 days, how can we do that? What are the different ways?
Sorry, go on, Greg.
I was just going to say tracking extracts or the corresponding SOAP objects are probably really the only 2 ways to gather that information if you don't already have them stored in a log somewhere else. Like those 2 places, that's it. And tracking extracts, it's going to be a bit of a pain because they usually only give 30-day increments at maximum. And if you have a lot of data, you're probably not going to be able to hit that 30 days because it'll time out. So you might have to do like 5-day increments to go back consistently across. So it's tough. Soap objects, you kind of run into the same sort of thing with the maximum payloads return and the length of time it takes for the call to go through and that kind of stuff. So depending how much it is, it could take a long time and it could be a lot of effort.
Yeah, I mean, tracking data is available on the account right back to account inception. You know, I've done it going back many years. I guess my point here is that, or a point to note is that yes, tracking data is only available in data views for 180 days, and that's for good reason. And Marketing Cloud is not a data warehouse. It's not designed for voluminous data storage. You could go and set up a data extract activity to go and get for a 24-hour rolling range, export that out to a safe house and into SFTP and store that in a data extension, and kind of add to that every day. But it's not the best place to be doing this. And the intent of these tracking extracts is to get it out, all your email engagement data out to a data warehouse, which is really the best place to be kind of managing this voluminous data. But you know, if you really do insist in having everything available in Marketing Cloud, then yeah, there's nothing stopping you from importing into a kind of data extension on a nightly basis. But it really depends on how many emails that you're sending each day.
And that data can, if you do import it into a data extension, it can grow to a size that becomes kind of untenable. You might not be able to query against it. So it's best to store it outside of the Marketing Cloud, like Elliot said.
That's a good point. Yeah. So I'll move on to the next question. So we have different stacks ranging from 1 to 12. And what's the difference between them? Is there any difference in being on stack 1 or the difference of being on stack 12? And if someone wants to choose one of the stack, how can he find the best one for his organization? Just reading that question, I think that's what they mentioned. If someone wants to choose one of the stack, would they be able to do? And how can he find which one is best for him?
I might try and take this one. I think the difference in terms of differences, there is not much of a difference between the stacks in terms of application or features and capabilities. They are pretty much just, think of that as just infrastructure pods that all represent the same functional capability. The only exception of that norm today is going to be stack 50. It's for customers who do need, who are located in Europe, because that stack is located in Europe. And therefore, if you have a data residency requirements for customers or for yourselves, that could be the reason to kind of get into that separate stack. Outside of that, customers don't get a choice to choose. They have to follow effectively whatever provisioning will be allocated to them, because we're the ones who distribute the load across different pods and making sure that, you know, the concept of shared infrastructure is being applied honestly and correctly across all the different nodes to maintain the performance.
Hey, Vlad,
Yeah, I was going to say,
I think all is correct, but I have to just say one small thing. You can actually request to get moved from a stack. I have done that when I was a customer. It means you have to get a new instance. It's not literally picking up what you already have and then moving it over to a new stack, but you can work through with your account executive to migrate over to a new stack. But it does, it does require getting a completely new Marketing Cloud instance.
So curious, in your particular case, what was the reason to move to a new stack?
Oh man, Vlad, I can't believe you're asking me.
No, look, I think
it was stack 7. It was stack 7. I at the time worked for a healthcare organization, and I had just left a previous organization where I had too many watermarks from being on stack 7. So when I got to this new company and I noticed they were on stack 7, I didn't care how much money it was. I went to the CMO and said, we have to get off of stack 7. And we migrated off of stack 7.
And totally, look, we had, I know, because in the past, we did have some of the performance implications and challenges with different stacks. And look, this just kind of goes back to that concept of shared infrastructure, where one customer can effectively impact someone else sitting on the same stack, on the same pod. So in the last few years, we've done tremendous amount of work to circumvent potential sort of accounts that have that ability to indefinitely scale up the operations processing, impact others. So we've done a lot of safeguards on the inner side of the things, and we significantly improved the infrastructure around to improve the way we handling the load. We've got sort of the lead time to say, ratio to say, we've got 3 times the capability on every single stack or account pod before we get the next new account to come in. So we do have that vision, especially for the peak loads when you've got these big peak weeks across the globe where there is a spike in trends of sending a lot of communications, transactional marketing messages, doesn't matter. So we worked on that a lot. But in addition to that, there is another good reason where you can nominate the stack and ask to move to a specific account. And it usually comes up in the cases where there are acquisitions happening. So imagine if, let's say, one customer is sitting on stack 6 and then they being acquired, or they acquired someone else who's sitting on stack 10, for example. It makes sense for them to consolidate all their marketing operations into the same account node. So that could be a good way to do that. But as Gilda said, we don't sort of just move the accounts around. Unfortunately, it will come down with a price that you have to re-implement yourself a bit.
It's a heavy lift. It's a heavy lift. So it's not something where I'm not saying for everybody to call support tomorrow and say, I want to move to a new stack, right? It's a heavy lift. It requires a new engagement. It's by business case. And we had a logical business case because it was for a major healthcare company. So I don't want everybody running to customer support saying, Gilda said I could move to a new stack, because this call is being recorded.
No, and the other side of that, look, if you do, like, specifically, if you're a today customer and you're noticing there is a sort of let's put it this way, back end challenges with your performance, right? Maybe automations start running instead of 10 minutes, like 30, and timing out and so forth. Raise a support case and talk to your account manager to say, we need to review that. We have a team who looks after the operational side of things. And certainly there could be, as I said, instances where maybe there is an impact from another customer. So let's say 99.99% going to be proactively monitoring the performance of the instances. But if there is something that is influencing your business, talk to your account executive to ensure that they're getting internal support to isolate your node and make it work the way it should be. So,
to Vlad's point,
just go to the URL. All the URLs include S with the stack number.
Except for stack 11, I think it's hidden, right? Is stack 11 the one you can't see?
This one.
Yep. Yeah. So to echo what Vlad was saying, though, about opening a support case, sometimes you get your hands on a really old account that goes back to like ET days, and I've seen these, and you see them honestly regularly. Okay, especially if you're working on the agency side of things. I have a personal experience with an insurance company, a little bit different than what Gilda was dealing with, but along similar lines, that had an account that went back to like 2007, and before Journey Builder existed, and their send logs did not.
That's the days of RM, what do you call it?
It was programs.
AIM, automated integrated messaging.
Yes. And but yeah, so when I got my hands on it, they're like, hey, we've noticed all our send logs aren't incorporating journeys. Did some research. Well, Journey Builder didn't exist when your send logs were created. So sometimes you'll end up dealing with some technical debt that's left over from old accounts. And if you open a support case, if you're not sure about what's going on, or if you contact your agency's reps, we can help you find out what's going on there. So you don't have to move.
On stack 1 and 2 and ET1.
I have a question for us, resident Salesforce experts here, or Salesforce employees. At Dreamforce 2019, Salesforce made a very exciting announcement that of a strategic partnership with Microsoft, where Marketing Cloud hosting is all moving over to Azure. Can you comment on that and when we can expect to see that and what the impact will be for Marketing Cloud customers?
I don't have any comment. I don't know if Vlad does.
Safe harbor, right, Vlad?
No, yeah, it's more, so take it with assumptions. So the work is still happening. There's still some work happening, but Azure is just more, it's one of the platforms, right? So we made a heavy investment in the Hyperforce. I'm sure you know about that. And that's something that we sort of working towards. The ideal state for us would be to not be isolated or limited to the infrastructure that we have within our space. We want to really be available on the public cloud, and Azure is just part of the sort of overall platform needs and vision. It certainly helps to expedite certain elements because, you know, Marketing Cloud is pretty much built on Microsoft stack, and therefore that gives us some leverage and some potential opportunities in certain technical aspects. But practically, we're still working on that. So it's a work in progress. I don't similar together. I don't have exact timeline when it's going to go live and when it's going to be available, except the fact that I know that we actively working on making it ready soon.
That's great. Thanks, Vlad. And the next question is regarding the reply mail management configuration. So can that be done at the child BU level? Let's say we have two BUs, one is parent and one is child. The BUs are organized for different brands of the same company. So can we do that as on the child BU level?
Yes, or you can roll it up to the parent, depending on how you want to structure it.
Okay.
I just want to dive into that a bit because it's a good question to ask. I think a lot of the times it's something that might be sort of missed through the configuration and design of the account, and especially if you've got different brands working on the different point. I know that I think the extension of that, and I can't remember if it was on Slack, that question was repeated or not. I believe the customer was in that particular use case looking to purchase one SAP. So it's quite important to understand like the implication of that and what will and will not be supported. So if you want to have multiple business units, you really need to understand, does the customer have enterprise RMM or do they have a standard RMM? Do they have one SAP or multiple SAPs? All of these need to be vetted together. And more importantly, I would feel to say it's important to understand why do you want to have a different SAP or sorry, RMM? Like what is the difference in handling the responses that goes from business unit to business unit? It's quite significant in the way that you apply at the account level because, you know, we might be handling unsubscribe requests coming up through RMM, we might be ignoring them. And again, like all of these little bits and pieces do make a big difference in your day-to-day account operational side of things.
That's a great point. Thanks, Vlad.
I just want to add, like, before you do a lot of these administrative / configuration stuff in the Marketing Cloud, it's really good to document all of this, right? And list in, you know, Marketing Cloud. And I know Jenna for sure, and Elliot and Greg, I don't know if he's still on, you guys always blueprint. Blueprinting is absolutely important. Don't just go in and set up an SAP or an RMM, and then you're the only one that holds the information. Document everything that you do in the Marketing Cloud. Document it well, document and hand it off to somebody, have somebody also review it and do QC it as well. Don't just set it up just to set it up without, as Vlad had mentioned, you know, you're not setting it up for the time being, you're setting it up for future state. And a lot of us have done migrations before, and it is an absolute pain in the you know what to have to untangle a web.
And make it a living document. Every time there is a change made, it needs to be reflected in the blueprint or the documentation. Make it important, you know, because that's essential. It's almost a brand level asset, you know, is that documentation, because if your program changes or something goes awry, you can refer to it and get instant answers rather than trying to, you know, pay someone to figure it out.
The SAP, RMM, IP, like domains, like all of those are important to add into your documentation. And those don't just impact at the send, but they impact reporting, they impact backend configuration. So it's extremely important that you all document this in your day-to-day.
Document why. I think one of the big elements that I was advocating, and especially in some of the recent courses that we did for managing delivery of Marketing Cloud projects, is it's super important to capture the context why you made this particular decision, because today it might be relevant, and then 2 years in, the brands could have changed, the operations could have changed, and if someone coming up to Jenna's point, trying to untangle the whole what is happening here, and they go, okay, so this is what's happening. Everyone can analyze what's happening today, but then the biggest question sort of comes up to why we're doing things like that, and that puts you into perspective of we're trying to make a business change, and now we have to assess the whole lot of operations to see, does it make a significant impact or the small impact on the account operations. So having the reason and context of why did you set up this particular feature in a certain way is very, very significant down the track. It might be less important when you are in the context today because all the business stakeholders are in a single point in time, but as long as the timeline sort of goes forward and the further you go away, that knowledge is what usually gets lost, and that's almost like becomes from gold to diamond to something incredibly valuable, because no one has that.
And
it's
echo that with documenting your own processes too. You're going to forget why you created something or why you approached it in a certain mannerism. I forget what I did last week or the reasons why I did things last week because you got so many projects flying at you, So document for your own sake in your repos, put down why you made a change.
Or why you named the API this or the trigger this and the send log is this, and why the data extension not expire. Document is so important. And nobody likes to do the boring stuff. And the most boring thing you could possibly do when it comes to Marketing Cloud or any platform is documentation. Everybody will put it off, but we can all tell you whether you're right. Even writing a code, there are people who copy and paste and put in the documentation why it's important. Is it something that was set up that's impacting your transactional campaign? So
not everyone hates to document. I'm a very big fan of documentation. As anyone that's worked with me will know, I over document.
He does, and it's fabulous.
I got to tell you, probably one of my most favorite things is putting comments in code, like just making little things, having silly little comments to explain what's going on and just being able to get it. Because I know that once I finish doing that and I write those little comments in there, 2 months down the line, when I come back in, I know exactly where I was. I know exactly what headspace I was doing, and I can pick it right back up. Whereas if I don't have those comments, I go in, I have to spend a couple hours figuring out what the hell I was doing because it's been 2 months since I touched this. So it's
like Greg was saying, you could have fun with it. Shout out to a short bus member who's not on this call, but someone else will get this reference, who we don't work together anymore, but we make code comments, or we were making code comments on a project that we were collaborating with different teams for a while. We had a lot of fun talking back and forth to one another. So you can have fun with it, guys. Don't think of it as, like Greg said, don't think of it as work.
I actually personally had a good reference to say to Greg's point. I needed to find some of the codes that I used to write like a couple of years ago. And to be honest, the only way I was able to find them through a bucket load of my repositories was through the comments, because I knew that I wrote something in a particular way. So when I was going through the code, I wasn't looking for like a particular loop or functions. I was kind of going, I made a note and I recall the mental note, like I did put some specific comment out there. So I looked for the comment and was able to find it. So that's, that really resonates. And one thing I want to say, because have been on the solution sort of design side a lot of the times, if you make your documentation being your first step and making that sure before you start, you get the documentation right, then it becomes less mundane task. That's what I found personally worked for me. And I look at it from the point, if my customer is happy and understands what the documentation states we're doing, then that's the right level of sort of where I can draw the boundary and say, well, cool, now we can move on to the build. It's a fair call because they would be the ones who need to own that going forward. And therefore, like, yes, part of that is I do it for myself, so I can refer to that and kind of quickly recap the context. But then the other side is making sure that the customers do get what you're building. And if they can interpret what you documented, at least the process wise, the reasoning, some of the high level sort of design points, then that's great. That's fantastic. And that's where you kind of move on to the build. You can start building parallel, but you don't finish documentation with just being a very high level. This is what we're going to do and go on. You have to drill in a bit more, and kind of the final side of documentation becomes documenting what was delivered. So maybe specific points and, code components and references to particular objects like customer keys and so forth. But you have to have the documentation up front. So
and then after delivery, again, make it a living document. That thing never dies. It never stops. It always keeps growing, becomes Frankendoc, whatever. You can delete parts of it out of it, but make sure if you're making sustainable processes, if you're working on a brand and not on the agency side where you have deliverables and you never see them again, make sure you document your processes. It's important on your side as well. If you win the lottery, as Greg always says, and quit working, the person coming in behind you is going to need to know what to do. And so they're going to need to know what to do from the day you left, not from 3 years ago.
That is one I will never forget. If you win the lottery.
Well, it's better than the alternative one that I used to use before I changed to that. It used to be if you get hit by a bus. It was a bit morbid, so I switched to winning the lottery. It's a bit nicer.
That's a great suggestion. I hope to implement that. I start the document, but then, Jenna, to your point, I won't update it regularly. That's something which I need to get into the habit of doing. So moving on.
I'm not saying I'm good at it. I'm just saying you should do it.
So moving on to the next question. This is by Rachel. I build push notifications for customers who use my company's mobile app. My manager would like to be able to preview these messages in a web browser. Can you think of a way to accomplish this aside from creating a cloud page for each push notification and copying and pasting the push message text and AMP script into the cloud page? Instead of that, using the cloud pages, is there any easier way to do that?
Can't think of a way not using cloud pages, but you can certainly make one dynamic cloud page to display all versions rather than multiple cloud pages to support an individual version.
That's a great
Anybody else?
I would agree with that. It feels like you probably want to code a bit more on how to make it sort of dynamic on the page and smarter on the page. So you have one single cloud page, and then you can maybe choose the messages, choose the subscriber you want to preview it against, and then have the content that sort of renders based on the selections, and figure out how to tinker with these components rather than having multiple pages. It doesn't feel like that would be the best way to do it.
Okay. Got it. And the next question.
So, yeah, just to add to that, I mean, I would go and use the there's in the Marketing Cloud API, there's this get push message REST API route, and I'll just go and put a link to it there. So, I'd use a cloud page in combination with this. Can I just make a note on? I've seen so many people actually go and create tools that do things like this using cloud pages, which is a very convenient method. But please consider security, and remember, these are publicly accessible pages, and you need to think about what is the kind of security implications of someone being able to discover this page. At the end of the day, it's security through obscurity. So there are mechanisms that you can put in place, such as kind of limiting by IP address to a certain IP address range. But yeah, if you're building tools like that, I mean, I would actually go and build the outside Marketing Cloud using kind of a Lambda or Cloudflare kind of worker function, and just so I can control access, have greater control around access to those kind of.
Or you could put an authentication method to be able to log into that cloud page before it becomes visible.
Yeah.
Well, you can create the Marketing Cloud web app or application, I think it's called, right?
Exactly.
So you can.
Yeah.
It's even the better way. I love that Eva brought that point. It makes a perfect sense. So if you do make these tools, yeah, we're kind of telling you some of the how to get that done, but certainly do make a consideration about security, privacy, correctness, and making sure that the right people have access to these tools. Because yeah, with great power comes great responsibility. So something to bring up into your mind.
Great. Thanks, Vlad. The next question is about the email templates. So they render differently on different clients, and sometimes on the Outlook especially, they become distorted and the images don't render properly. And sometimes there may be extra space in between the different content blocks. Do you suggest any tool or any best practices or some considerations that we need to keep in mind when designing the emails?
The least experienced person with coding email templates, I would say practice makes it perfect. I found that if you're working in the email design and email build, it's almost like its own niche of how do you code that. And there's like, even for me, when I needed to build like a mock-up stories and examples, I used quite a lot of blog posts, but I found that like Litmus has a pretty good library of references to how to make the code cross-compatible, especially with Outlook tweaks and things that don't work and create extra spaces and all that sort of stuff. To Gemma's point, have a look into how do we build native templates in Marketing Cloud that are responsive, and they do include quite a lot of these code that handles some of the differences across the browsers, not just the empty placeholders, but there is a library of templates with some sort of like a content-like placeholders in them. I found them really, really great in terms of figuring out how I can quickly tinker and replicate that without doing a very heavy lifting. If you need to be pixel perfect, you definitely need to use some tools that give you rendering across the devices, because there is no better testing than real life testing. So you can get, probably maybe up to 80% accuracy if you just code it right. But if you want to have more guarantee, more weight, then something like a Litmus test that we used to do usually kind of gives you the preview across devices.
And fortunately, if I remember right, it's been a few months since I've taken the exam, but I don't believe there's really any front end dev questions. Greg, correct me if I'm wrong on the exam itself. So you're in the clear there.
And not on the exam, but I mean, it is, Litmus is really an invaluable tool. Just a couple of points on Litmus. Firstly, I mean, there are alternatives like email and acid. I'd say Litmus is a more extensive feature set. Also, bear in mind, there is a kind of instant preview feature and integration between Litmus and Content Builder. You don't have to use it though. I mean, I've seen customers surprised that Litmus, in order to use the Marketing Cloud Litmus integration, you need an enterprise Litmus account, which in some instances costs more than Marketing Cloud. I mean, it comes with a hefty price tag. But if you can live with the convenience of sending test emails to a provided Litmus email address, or even just pasting your HTML code in, if you're not using AmScript, then you can probably get away with it. Also, there are frameworks available, most notably MJML. And I'll put a link in the chat window. Think of MJML as like Twitter Bootstrap, but for email. So they've already gone and accommodated for how emails are displayed across different clients, and I know they're huge MJML advocates who kind of swear by it, but it's worth kind of exploring.
Thanks, Elliot. And the next question is kind of a generic question. So what are the different kinds of communication channels that are available in the Marketing Cloud? So we know the main ones, the email, mobile, social advertisement, so on. If you have more insights, what are the ways that people can be reached out?
I mean, any marketing channel, right? That's why it's the Marketing Cloud. So if you really wanted to, you could even integrate with like, guys, help me out here, display servers, for ad display and stuff like that. Or is that what Interaction Studio is doing now?
Not yet, but are you talking like about DMP sort of integration that used to be with different publishers?
Yeah, that too. You could do anything with the Marketing Cloud. So any channel that you can really think of, the sky's the limit, really. It's just about how much effort you want to put into it, because they're not all like natively in there. You might have to build a process to access them.
Yeah, like I know a
Kind of,
few different clients have put custom journey activities to include print vendors and things like that. So like there's a lot of possibilities. It's just what's built in and what needs to be customized. I know there are some specific print vendors that have their own custom built journey activity that you can just kind of slide in if you get an account with them. So like it may not even be a high end on you for development. I'm sorry, a high end cost of development for you. It could just be you pay the right person the right amount of money and they'll give you what you need.
You might not be able to get a billboard printed, but a digital billboard you might be able to incorporate into the marketing cloud. So
Never say never.
exactly.
I've just made a list for completeness of what I believe to be a comprehensive list of all channels supported by Marketing Cloud. And I do have a question for Vlad. But you know, email, mobile push, SMS, MMS if you're in the US, Line, Facebook Messenger, WhatsApp, social advertising. You've got Facebook, Instagram, Google Ads, LinkedIn, Twitter, Pinterest, Snapchat, and also obviously websites through Interaction Studio. On WhatsApp, Vlad, I was keen to actually get my hands on it, and it all became a bit too hard. It's you know, took you to all the documentation says, well, you go to App Exchange, but there's nothing on App Exchange. And it looks like it is an install package, but it's one that you need to contact your account manager through. How do you enable WhatsApp?
Yeah, it's one of the paid features, mainly because we don't have a sort of ways to provision free accounts, or any, therefore there is no even need to publish anything. Like the whole part of the provision includes configuration and tying up to the WhatsApp account, and therefore it needs a bit more information. So it's a paid SKU, so you need to purchase that. It's a separate utilization from super messages in the account, and that's why that channel is handled differently.
So thanks, Vlad. So speaking of multiple communication channels, let's say we have included different communication to different channels, and then we want to keep track of the communication sent out to a customer across all the channels and only send them the communication on one channel. Let's say they have their email available and they're active on the email, and we send the email and prevent sending the communication on the other channel. How can we do that? How do we track basically and prevent sending from other channels?
Exclusion lists are your best friends. Or exclusion data extensions, depending on how you want to set them up. But yeah, I would definitely set up some filtered data, or it's not filtered data extensions, but some data extensions to be used as exclusions from the different channels.
Yeah, that would be like including that in a journey and updating somewhere in the data extension and keeping track.
Yeah, I mean, you've got to track whether you know, what message they received. And a really good technique, actually, Adam Spriggs put me onto, is if you're using multi-channel, consider using SendLog data extensions, which are available for SMS, email, and push. And if you're using an AMP script in your message content, and let's say that I've got an AMP script variable called call to action or offer, which I'm kind of programmatically defining what that value is displayed in my, say, email, for example. If I create a corresponding field named offer, that is a field that matches the AMP script variable, and create that in my SendLog data extension, then when the message is sent, that offer value, in fact, let's just say it's, I don't know, even retrieving it's referencing a content block, say content block by key, it will go and put that, maybe the offer value or the offer message or the actual content block key or name or ID actually in that field. So you can then go and use that together with AMP script and other messages to say that, you know, when sending say an SMS message, for example, I'll go and check perform a lookup on your SendLog data extension to see whether that content block ID or key has been used in email, and if it has, then use a different message. So yeah, SendLog's are a great way of tracking which content was sent to a subscriber.
That's great. Thanks, Elliot. And the next question is regarding the testing of cloud pages or any other scripting activities that we create. So what is the best practice to test this prior, and you have any suggestions on that?
I would say best practice for script activities is to try it out in low volumes on a code resource page and write out your values there. That's the quickest and easiest way to view it. If your script is too large for that, what I would look to do is try catch and logging. So along the way, as you do each section of the script, have it write to a data extension, this pass and it was this value, and then have that data extension hold the log so you can see where it failed through what's output inside of that log for each run, and build it that way. And then you can have the try catch to catch it. So if there is a big 500 error in your script, instead of just tossing the whole thing, it'll push it to the catch where you can then write, hey, this failed at this point, that kind of stuff. So like that's probably the best way to test and debug that I've found is one of those two options.
Try catch, yeah, that's the easiest way to do as well. And moving on to the next question, if somebody wants to create their own APIs, what is the best way to do that? Is there any place they can go and learn? Any suggestions or ideas?
So it's really the only way, and I wouldn't even say this is really creating your own APIs. All you'd be doing is creating kind of an endpoint that you could push stuff to, but you would have to then build all of like the server-side JavaScript to do all of the actions and receive the post information, and then parse it out and correctly set up securities and all that. Like it's one of those. Is it possible? Yes. Can it be used effectively? Yes. Is it the right choice to make? Probably not. Like there's certain use cases, like if you're using it as a processing page for a form, say you got a crazy form, you're doing an Ajax post to it through a bunch of different locations, that'd probably be okay. If you're creating something to do a specific API function that isn't a native API function, you're opening risk and putting some security issues, and plus it's not built to handle high volume or high frequency hits, so you could blow things up that you don't even realize you could blow up. So it's one of those, it's a neat thing to play with, but in production and utilization, it's probably not the best idea.
Got it.
Again, consider security, like Elliot was speaking of earlier. How many processes are you passing data through? Each time you open a door, it opens a vulnerability.
That's a great point, Jenna. Thank you. And the next one, how do we move the synchronized DEs to the standard DE? If we were to move the data from the synchronized DE to the standard DE, instead of creating the SQL queries, is there any other easier or automated method?
I don't think there's any easier or there's any other method. If you need to move the data, then it would be a query. I mean, you can try working with API, but it wouldn't make sense, really.
WS proxy script.
You can create a filtered data extension from synchronized data extensions. That's been available for a few years now, but maybe potentially could save a data filter, couldn't you, Vlad, off that filtered data extension and then run that in the automation?
You could create a WS.
Sorry?
You could create a WS proxy script to do it, to either create the filter like you're talking about and run it in automation, or you could just move the data with the script.
Yeah,
as
then
well.
into the amount of processing and the level of effort, and like it's really SQL query is your best best option. There is other ways, absolutely. There are many different ways, and in different places they probably are good solutions over top of it. I'm sure, because I mean, as anything in Marketing Cloud, in one situation it's the best thing, inside of another it's the worst thing you can do. So it's all about context. But yeah, I would say general best practice, SQL query is the only way to, or the best way. I don't want to say only, because I never want to say only. There's always other ways.
Thanks, Greg. And Naji, you want to continue with the questions? We have a couple more questions. So if you still have any other questions, please type in the chat window. We may be able to answer a few more questions. And
Yeah.
yes, Naji, take that.
Absolutely. So we do have a question from Raphael. Do different methods of sending emails affect how many super messages they cost? For example, sending messages with transactional API. Will sending messages with transactional APIs increase cost?
It depends on like comparison, because like transactional API, I believe, is sent automatically at high importance, which is 3 super messages, compared to where if you do a triggered send, it's only by default 1 super message. So I mean, there are differences, but it's not necessarily because of the type of send. It's more of the context around the send. So that to make them fastest, they go at high priority, which costs more.
So I can just build on that. So just with the high priority. So if you're using kind of the classic triggered sends, that's you created your triggered send definition through the interface and said as a high priority send, then that message will go out as fast as possible at a cost of 4 super messages. If you use the transactional API, the new transactional API, it's 1 super message. It goes out as quickly as possible. So I encourage you to use that. That there are messages will incur additional super messages in some scenarios. For example, by using interactive email, that attracts an additional super message. If you're using email recommendations and someone opens that email, that's an additional super message. AMP for email is no additional super messages. Maybe other people can help me out and where it would attract additional super messages. File attach AMP script function isn't a super message, but there is an additional charge. Yes, it's related to utilization.
Just double checking, I heard you right. Did you say the transactional API is only 1 super message? Because last year from the product manager, he was telling me it was 3.
I think it depends on how you negotiate your account too.
Could be depending on that. But that's what I
just added a document because I don't think we should waste time going over how many super messages, because I think JB has other questions. So I just added a document that breaks down predictive intelligence, mobile email impressions, and group messages. I think that one's
email messages.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe transactional API has changed. It's not listed on here, but it certainly used to be one, but I'll check that out.
Yeah. So our next questioner is, are there any tips or hacks for data validation on forms and data hygiene? Yep. And that's from Yamini. Did I freeze the internet?
Sure. No. It's just thinking. I mean, the number one kind of error that I see all the time for data validation is incorrect email addresses, particularly where people have entered their email address in a form and misspellings of Gmail and things like that. I encourage you to go and use a list validation service like Tower Data or Bright Verify, where you can upload a list of email addresses, and they've also got API integrations which actually not only validates the syntax of the email, but also will let you know whether that email address is deliverable. It does this actually by starting to send an email behind the scenes. It's it's a very powerful feature. But this is where I additionally, you should kind of closely monitor which emails are not being sent. In the data extract activity, there's a not sent report, and that if you go and look at this regularly, download that, and there's a reason field as the last column, and you will see excluded by list detective, maybe because the email address, maybe it's the role-based email address, or maybe the spelling of the email is incorrect. So while Marketing Cloud will show how many emails are sent, you need to go looking for information to understand why emails are not sent. So I do encourage you to go and monitor that, and so you can intervene if necessary by enabling CLD, which is Custom List Detective, for maybe specific usernames, depending on your use case.
Also, before you go, and these, Fresh Address is another, Bright Verify, like Elliot was talking about. These are great services, and a lot of them integrate with the Marketing Cloud through App Exchange, some of them even. So you can put these in place so that you don't have to worry about qualifying emails on a day-to-day basis. But some of these services, just to note, provide you back a listing of email addresses that might be spelled wrong or be incorrect. Check with your legal department before you go and update these. It can be a violation of your country's data privacy laws to make a manual change to these email addresses or correct them. So make sure you check with your legal department before you actually try to correct email addresses that are removed through these services.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, when someone provides the implicit consent, they do that for that specific email address. I don't think it gives you the authority to go and change that email address or correct it. Also, there is a kind of free option available. If you've got, let's say, a form on your website and you want to verify whether Marketing Cloud can send an email to that email address, then there's the validate email REST API route where you can go and validate the MX record and also list detective to say that it's syntax and MX, I think, isn't it? So it will say it will check whether the email address is correct syntax and whether an MX record exists for that email domain.
For that sender, for the sending domain,
for only that email address, yeah. Yeah, only that domain, yeah.
The domain itself, yeah.
Yeah, it's quite kind of a basic thing, but it certainly would go and pick up any misspellings and essentially give you a hint of whether List Detective would even attempt delivery of that email.
And just a note, List Detective will remove any aliases that are recognized, like info at, what are the other ones, guys? There's a series of them that they automatically throw out because Salesforce sees these as possibly compromised addresses.
Well, yeah, I think you're referring to role-based email address, such as sales and
exactly,
info
yes,
and mail at, and this is intentional in that all the digital marketing platforms, from Mailchimp, Campaign Monitor, and others, even Pardot, go and block sending to role-based email addresses. Salesforce don't disclose what this list of role-based usernames actually is, but you can identify that just by looking at kind of not sent. You can enable CLD, or request it to be enabled, this custom list detective, and there's a feature called List Detective for usernames, where you can ask Salesforce to go and add exclusions. Bear in mind, if you enable CLD, don't just go and add those records to the user interface yourself. That has a kind of reverse effect. It denies them by default. You have to go and request them to be added. But please remember that role-based email addresses are blocked for good reason, and that's because they indicate that this individual isn't necessarily a person. The whole notion of a subscriber is an individual who's consented to receive communication, but a role-based email address indicates they're not a specific person. there are, I work with Xero, and who are a kind of B2B company, and all their customers really are accounting departments, and they have lots of accounts at and partners at role-based emails, so quite legitimate. And so you can have that kind of bypass through Custom List Detective on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you, guys. I love your input. So we have a question from Lynn. She's just wondering, you guys know how we've done migrations before. All of us have done migrations from migrating a lot of content into Marketing Cloud. Is there any really good tools that you guys maybe recommend for just like getting all of that stuff into Marketing Cloud, especially when it's just so much content to get in?
From an external ESP or from another instance in Marketing Cloud? Which type of migration are we talking?
From an external. Great question. From an external ESP into Marketing Cloud. She's trying to think of another way besides copy and paste.
APIs.
APIs. I mean, I've done something with Marketo where I had to. Sorry?
Hold on for a second, Ellie. I wanted to give Greg a chance to also chime in because I know your team also manages a lot of migrations.
Yeah, it's one of those that there's really not a perfect built solution to do it. Like there's a lot of different things where there's different like MuleSoft or services where they have built connections and you can utilize those across. Honestly, I haven't found them to be as efficient to make up the costs. So really the options are build something yourself using the APIs on both sides, which is going to be a huge upfront lift to be able to create, develop, and maintain something that you're going to use once, or to look at different partners or agencies that have built these and do these things and pay them a one-time fee to move the things across, get that guarantee and shift it. I know it sounds like an advertisement. I work at an agency, so I mean, it sounds like but really like it's really those two options. There isn't a tool like there's a Accenture built pretty neat tool that does a lot of development stuff for Marketing Cloud, but it's only on Marketing Cloud. There is no connection to outside stuff. So in order to try to connect it, there's not something pre-built to help you with that.
And then it creates a dependency for use on that tool if you do use it for internal migrations. Is that correct as far as I understand it? And that's, I'm talking here saying, you know this, Greg.
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to get too much into that. I was just using it as an example of like cool tools that are available, but there's very specialized versions of it. So for instance, like that won't help with a migration externally, but internally it might help you in different ways. I don't want to, it's kind of off topic of the question and go too detailed into that. So I don't want to, dig in there.
I like that. That's a pretty good response. Vlad has raised his hand. Talk to me, Vlad. What do you got?
Yeah, I just wanted to not leave it away. So I think one of the things from my personal experience when we did consultancy was using migration from another platforms as a way to transform and improve the business a bit, especially when it comes down to large instances with a lot of legacy stuff. The intricacy with the content personalization, and I've seen few people fail with that because you just messed up to find that one simple personalization string, and then when the email goes out to a big audience and it looks embarrassing for a brand. So you go, if you're investing into moving to the new technology, new platform, why not invest a little bit more and make it right? So kind of think through, review the templates that you really need, minimize it down to something that is more reusable, modularized, and then look at the content again from the optimization standpoint of view. Why do we have 50,000 worth of assets if we can get down to 5? Like something like that can go, and then using that as an approach to structure your migration to be not just a one-off exercise. Kind of think through what can we do to, what's the first level, like what are the campaigns that we need to deploy, journeys we need to construct, like to go live, and then what are the assets that we need to build ongoing? Because it could be the cost of migrations actually overwhelms the cost of building new. And because there is a good reason usually to move to a new platform, you might find that, for your customers, you actually would spend less time building something new if you've got key elements like templates, right? Then it just really like the copies that you kind of need to move apart, and that becomes a much easier task. So it's more, again, talking from the experience we had in the past, I found like the customer was holding up to that. I need to migrate all of my 50,000 different things. And we ended up talking, and at some point in time, we'll agree that it's not worth discussing too much. Let's just start doing that. And in 2 months' time, they realized that it was a better proposal for them as well.
Yeah, I like that. I like that response too. We'll finish this question off with Elliot's answer, and then we'll go on to the next one.
Sure. Yeah, just extending what Flav was saying. Please recognize that every single Marketing Cloud customer that I've certainly worked with, new Marketing Cloud customers replatforming. So they're moving from something to Marketing Cloud. Very rarely will you find someone who's not doing any marketing and just wants to go and get Marketing Cloud to start email marketing. It's more of a feature request. I mean, in the past, I've gone and written API integration to Marketo and other platforms, but perhaps we need a platform migration tool to enable replatforming from kind of common platforms across to Marketing Cloud and copy assets and emails over. That'd be kind of cool.
Does support provide that service, Vlad?
Not that I know of, but I think that's where it goes to the point of Greg said, you kind of need to work with a partner network, because you'll all highlight at the right point, right? When you build that solution, you kind of take a responsibility to maintaining that and keeping up with other platform updates. So we internally just can't afford that. We're not going to maintain the tools that connect and have dependency on other vendors and products. Therefore, we can provide, as much as we can think through. Our content API is quite extensive in the way that you can port a lot of inbound requests to move programmatic content in a programmatic way, but the outside story is something that we would just not be able to take. And I don't think it sort of sits and even makes sense from the product management perspective to take it as a strategical outlook. That's where App Exchange is a great way. And if someone is working in a company where they do a lot of these migrations, it would certainly make sense for them to invest into building a toolkit that will help to take and port something from external platforms into Salesforce Feed.
Okay, thank you so much, guys. All right, so we have another question here from Javier. Okay, so what's the best practice to send notifications to different emails to a single subscriber key? So here's an example. If I have a credit card and I want my notifications to reach me at Gmail, and I also have another credit card, but I want them to reach me at my Yahoo email. So 2 different credit cards, and they want them to reach them at different ones. The sending is performed by trigger sends. Is it possible to replicate the functionality of Journey by choosing the email using trigger sends? I mean, in one way, I sometimes think, well, whatever email you signed up with that credit card, just sign up one with Yahoo and sign up one with Gmail. But I'm sure you guys are smarter and have like a much different way of thinking of this. That's just how I was thinking in my head. Because your trigger response.
I agree with you, G. I honestly think that's on the side of the client to, to try to inform their subscribers. We can set up messaging that will inform their subscribers that whatever email address they sign up with will be the one that they receive messages to. If they would like to receive messages to an alternative email address, you could set up a cloud page or something like that if your client has a business case for that. But it might not be worth it.
Yeah.
Hearing practically, if I'm getting the question right, it's almost like saying, can I maintain more than one channel identifier active in the platform for the same subscriber key? And the answer is, you'll find yourself in more difficulties managing that and hand holding that versus what it's worth. So it's practically, you'd like to be able to consolidate and say, all my communications to that individual has to go that way, but you can almost want to pivot your consent that you get from the context in a database to potentially have multiple representations. Like marketing databases not always sort of have to be given that unique identifiers, but you do need to have a better data strategy to handle that in a way that that we've got 3 representations of Vlad, And for this one, we're going to use for these particular communications. And the second VLAT will be for these type of communications. The third one would be for marketing. It's complex, but it's cleaner way from the platform execution and management perspective than if you want to try to go and sort of fight and overwrite the contact points every single time you need to make a decision and send communication.
And I actually thought of a use case where I have seen this set up, like something similar set up. We have a client that is a nonprofit, and they have a family email address versus individual email address thing going on. But we didn't create any processes to handle that inside of the marketing cloud. That's being handled inside of the CRM, which is where customer relationships like that and maintaining subscriber keys is really best done. If you do have to create it in the marketing cloud, I'm sure it can be done, but it is going to be a heavy lift.
Cool. Thank you so much.
I want to double up on what Vlad was saying as well. That Marketing Cloud is a marketing database. It's not built to be the place to combine everything into that single entity. That's more where you get into like your Sales Cloud and your core products. That's where you get that one single view. The Marketing Cloud is going to have times where you have to have multiple subscribers for the same entity. So it's definitely 100% accurate. I just wanted to help emphasize that point. That's more than acceptable.
And I just want to, just for 30 seconds, just to explain what, just extend on what Greg was saying, that going back to the original question, which was, can you go and update change the email address for a triggered send definition when you go and create it? Yes, you can. Yeah, there's an option to say update all subscribers, and it will go and change the email address so you can maintain that same system of record that's a subscriber key. Is it a good idea? Probably not. Given that, if that subscriber unsubscribes, then if you want to send using a different email address and update the subscriber again, they won't receive the email because that subscriber is unsubscribed. So yeah, that's why I say you should be using different subscribers.
Thank you. All right, so that was a good response. We're hitting at 10:21, guys. So we are at our last 9 minutes. And I just want to be respectful of everyone's time, particularly the speakers. They've done such a great job tonight. I do want to ask, let me see, I'm looking at these last questions. I want to ask one final question. So I'm sorry if I didn't get to everyone's questions tonight. I feel like I really do just have like 2 more. I think I'm going to try to get these, but I'm asking for just quick responses and quick answers real quick. So this was from Harry.
And also, if you don't get to the questions, remember, we still have that Slack channel.
We do.
And a lot of the folks on the panel, they're also on the Slack channel. So if we don't get to your questions, please feel free to post the questions on the Slack channel, where all of us are still very active.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. All right, so I'll just let this one be my last question then. This is from Harry. All of our campaigns run at real time via journeys triggered via API from external platforms. I've been using the SMS activity block, custom activity using SSJS to run my operations, like generating bit.lys on the fly. No super messages are consumed, as no messages are generated by the SMS activity. Our Salesforce executive says that this could fly as long as SFMC product doesn't close this gap. How legal is this approach to using SMS activity as a custom activity block?
Sounds like you found a good hack.
Yeah, you need to be quiet and don't tell none of us about this.
One concern I would have is the level of processing you're introducing, because it's running on every single one you put in. So if you get high volume at once, you could potentially, and I say this hesitantly because the level of qualities of the stacks have greatly increased, but if you hit it hard, you could slow down, if not take down a stack by the amount of processing you're pushing in that. So if you're doing millions of records, hitting that script at the same time and running that script millions of times, that's a lot of processing pushed out. So it's something to consider with those. And that's why, as much as I am a huge advocate of server-side JavaScript and script activities, I'm also a huge advocate of not having them in Journey Builder because of that. That's why the custom journey activity block was created, was to allow you to do that kind of stuff, because takes it off of the server of Salesforce and lets you continue to utilize that at the most efficient manner you can, and all of that individual processing is handled off of their server, so it's not affecting it. So yeah, that's my 2 cents there.
And remember, Journey Builder is queued, like Greg said, so you can bring down all your other services if you're running millions of records through. But if you're on low, if you got low volume going through there, I think you found a good hack.
If anytime Marketing Cloud goes down, I'm just thinking of you now. I know. I'm kidding. You are not to blame. All right. Well, that is our last question of the night. If a lot of us, obviously, some people already know where we can find you guys, but if anybody wants to give a quick 30-second shameless plug as to how we can find you, don't hesitate. We would love to hear where we can find you at. Go, Greg. You first.
Oh, I'm first.
Yeah, Greg Lifford.
All right. So probably 2 best places to find me is gortonington.com. That's my blog, which is also tied to Salesforce Stack Exchange, or that's my alias. Then as well, howtosfmc.com. That's another one that I'm involved with. Those are probably the best places to find me. Outside of that, I do have Twitter. It's at Gregory R. Gifford. As well as on LinkedIn. Feel free to reach out and connect with me there. I post periodically, but not super active. Other than that, I mean, I work at DEG. Feel free to reach out to DEG, and I'll be happy to talk to you there.
Good, thank you so much. What about you? We'll talk with Vlad. You're next.
All right, so I guess I work in Salesforce. You can reach out, I guess, through the company, but practically LinkedIn is a good way to connect. And then Slack channel that Gilda was sharing, I still do look at that when I get a chance. So definitely sign up and become part of the broader community and support each other and get in touch with us.
Thanks so much. All right, so Elliot, 30 seconds, what you got?
So check out my blog, mc.chat, LinkedIn, linkedin.com in Elliot, and Twitter, Elliot Harper, links in there. Just so you don't get upset with me that I only accept LinkedIn invitations from people I know or who I want to know. It's just because I must get 20, 30 a day. So please don't be offended. I encourage you to follow me instead if
I respect that.
you want to.
Dangerous, bro.
Oh,
I got you. And Jenna, what about you?
Finding my mute button. I'm Jenna Matson. I'm on Greg Gifford's team at DEG. I'm a senior Salesforce Marketing Cloud engineer and MVP marketing champion, and a co-founder along with Greg. And who else is on here? Greg of the How to SFMC community, and you can find me most of the time on there or on Email Geek Slack. So if you want a direct conversation with me, reach out to me with one of those 2.
Awesome. And JB, last but not least, you have done so much for everyone, helping to put a lot of this together. JB, why don't we how can we connect with you?
I should say I'm more active on the LinkedIn. I check the messages not regularly, but once in a week at least. So that's the best way to reach out to me. And on Twitter, I do check the messages, but not, I can say it's only once in a month or so. LinkedIn is the best channel to communicate.
Thank you so much. And Gilda, you have helped us put all of this together. You are our Shiro. In any other places that we can reach you at?
No, I posted it in the chat.
Thank you so much. A lot of people have put their stuff in the chat. Feel free to copy and paste, connect with these guys. These guys are amazing. All of you, thank you so much. Seriously, I would not have gotten as far as I got without being listening and watching you guys' blogs and your videos and connecting and bothering the heck out of most of you. Thank you guys for everything that you guys have done tonight. You have made this final night of our presentations a really good one to remember. Thank you guys for everything. Again, connect with us on Slack, and go take your test. You guys are gonna do great. Go take your test. Look forward for it. Love the thumbs up from Elliot. And thanks again, everyone. JB, any last comments?
Yeah, we do have the most awaited duck race as well. We're going to pick the winners. So anybody who wants to drop out, please feel free to drop out if you don't intend to participate in the duck race. But before that, yeah, I want to give out a huge shout out to all the speakers, not just for this session, but you have been supporting for everything. I can count on you for anything that's related to the Marketing Cloud. You're like the pillars, and we all are dependent on you. Thanks for everything you do to the community.
I second that. 100 thumbs up. I love you guys.
So I will do a quick duck race. I'll not take much time here. So I have the participants fill out the sheet. The last session and before session, we have asked the attendees to fill out the form with their names, or whoever wanted to participate in the duck race. So we have the list of, this is the list of people who have filled out the form. So there are like around 25 members. So I'm gonna, I have included 25 members. Let's see who's gonna win. We'll go by the numbers and we'll compare that in the sheet.
All right, drum roll, guys. Who's gonna get it? Let's see who the winner is. I love these games. These are so cute. Oh, oh, number one is our winner.
Let's see later, once we are done with choosing the 5 winners, at the end we'll see who the first one is, and next the second round.
So I'm writing down number 1.
And it's a surprise until we go into the sheet and look at the
Come on, reindeer, go, reindeer, go. Oh. So it looks like number 2 is next.
The first one who filled the form and the second one who filled the form are lucky.
I will not be surprised if 3 wins. That will, come on. Oh, 13 came for the win.
Lucky number.
Hey, that is a good number, right?
And we have 1, 2, and 13 so far.
Mm-hmm. I just want the reindeer to win. Is it bad that I want the reindeer to win?
No,
snow ducky, 16.
And the last winner, I'm gonna start this now.
Reindeer, 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 reindeer. Go, 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 go. Come on, reindeer.
Oh, it's the clown.
It's a clown duck. Congratulations to all of those people.
Let's see who are the winners. 1, 2, 13, 16, and the last one is 8, is it?
Yes.
Yeah. Going back to sheet. The first one I think is Ravi. I remember seeing Ravi Teja. And the second, Anup Agarwal. And 13, Kerry. 16, Rafal.
Oh, great job, Rafal.
8, Shad. Congratulations to all the winners. And with that, we're done. We conclude our Marketing Cloud Developer Bootcamp. And I thank you all for joining the sessions, and the recordings will be uploaded next week. And today's links and the resources that are shared in the chat, I will include them in the description, so you can go and check that at a later point of time as well. And we really wish you all the best to clear your certifications. In any, you have any other questions, please reach out to us. As we shared our channels that we are most active on and the ways you can find out, please feel free to reach out for any questions or any help. Thanks everyone, and thanks all the speakers and making it a successful one. Thank you.
And thank you, JB, for setting these boot camps up, and Najee for you know, you guys tag team this one. So thank you both.
JB is the boss. She's amazing. Thanks, guys, for everything.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.
Bye.